Keeping Up with Jones, the Lonnie Jones podcast adventure. I am your host, Lonnie Jones. My wife Jackie and I moved to the city of Huntsville in 1986 for me to be a youth and family minister. I have been a minister since 1980. I have served in this community as a police chaplain assigned to a SWAT team since 1992, and I've been in private practice as a licensed professional counselor since 1998. I'm also an adventure educator and an avid outdoorsman. I dabble in rock climbing and I goof around with Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Our life has been full of many wonderful experiences and some just outright adventures. I used to write about those things in a little church bulletin article. So now instead of asking you to read those things, we're just going to talk about them in our podcast. And as we talk about them, we're going to talk about the facts. The facts lead to concepts, and the concepts lead to application. One caveat about the facts is, for the most part, we're going to tell you the facts just as they happened. But every now and then, we're going to tell you the way other people have told us they remember it happening with a little bit of embellishment. It's all good, clean fun and for educational purposes. Thank you for listening, and we hope you enjoy Keeping Up with Jones. Faulkner University announces a 60% tuition discount for members of the Church of Christ. Now, there are some guidelines. This 60% tuition reduction is applicable to adult undergraduate Bible degrees or graduate Bible degrees from the Curley Graduate School of Theology in the VP Black College of Biblical Studies. You must satisfy all admission requirements and maintain satisfactory academic progress. You must remain continuously enrolled, including summers, until the completion of the degree. You must provide a letter from an elder or minister, preferably on church letterhead, verifying that you're an active member of a Church of Christ congregation prior to your initial enrollment. This offer applies to adult undergraduate degrees such as biblical studies, youth and family ministry tracks, and it also includes graduate degrees. And those are the Master of Arts in Biblical Studies, the Master of Arts in Family Life Ministry, or a Master of Theology, and it also applies to the PhD in Biblical Studies. For undergraduate inquiries, please contact Adult Enrollment, 334-386-7140, 334-386-7140, or Adult Enrollment at Faulkner edu. That is Adult Enrollment at faulkner.edu. For graduate inquiries, please call 334-386-7539, 334-386-7539. Graduate enrollment at faulkner.edu. That is graduate enrollment at faulkner.edu. Faulkner University is a sponsor of Keeping Up with Jones, the Lonnie Jones podcast adventure. TKM Incorporated in Moss, Tennessee is a construction company that specializes in erosion control, seeding, and soil, hydroseeding, hydromulch, minor excavation, and silt fence. They also provide traffic control and construction signs. Their business is keeping people safe, but their passion, their mission, is they wish that all men could be saved. TKM has adopted the nickname the King's Men because as they serve you, they also serve the King. If they could provide any of their services for you, please contact them at 931-243-3958. That is 931-243-3958. Or you can contact them on the net at tkminc2001 at twlakes.net. That is tkminc2001 at twlakes.net. TKM Incorporated is a sponsor of Keeping Up with Jones, the Lonnie Jones podcast adventure. The ants go marching two by two, hurrah, hurrah. The ants go marching two by two, hurrah, hurrah. The ants go marching two by two. The little one stops to tie his shoe, and they all go marching down in the ground to get out of the rain. I was in the catwalk at Greater Atlanta Christian Schools auditorium, and we were trying to figure out if we were going to rappel into the building to start our show. And they were practicing for a kindergarten graduation, and the tiny little kids came walking into the auditorium to that song. The little bitty short legs and the heads larger than their bodies came walking down the aisle in pairs, and the little song was playing, and I thought it was probably the most adorable thing I'd seen up to that point. But the song stuck in my head. And I began to sing it. I began to hum it. Well, we were on a van trip with a bunch of kids. We were doing the drama troupe that I sponsored with the church that later became this all male group that we had. But in the group was Jennifer Beverly. She became Jennifer Carlton after she married Dr. Randy Carlton. But I would sing that song, and she hated it, and she probably hated me for doing it. But it was her nemesis when we would be on a van trip, and I would sing the ant song. Well, when Jennifer and Randy started having children, the girls, this group of really close friends that grew up in my youth group, they decided they wanted to make Jennifer a blanket, and they made her an ant blanket. And it was one of the coolest art projects I'd ever been involved in, because they said, in order to make this little blanket, we need 10 squares. And those squares need to have illustrations on those squares, and those illustrations need to be ants. And we need a square with one ant, and we need a square with 2, and then 3, and then 4, and so on. And I had the ants eating chocolate chip cookies, and I had the ants doing all kinds of things as per the verses of the song that we knew and part of the verses that we made up. And I've been thinking about not just ants, but I've been thinking about rain. And I did kind of this deep dive. What do ants do when it rains? We've got a fire ant problem in the yard, and there's all kinds of things you can do and things you can read to get rid of ants. But ants are fairly resilient. There's not really super effective ways to get rid of them. And you'd think that just, filling their little anthill up with water might discourage them. But that really doesn't work. Depending on what you're reading, there's some debate, but some anthills, they close up the tunnels so that rain can't penetrate. And then I read one thing that said ants have a drainage system. They actually have a series of tunnels and a series of airlocks that allows the water to drain all the way down to the water table, and the anthill or the ant mound never floods. Standing on the back porch and watching it rain. I've stood at a fence and watched it rain. Well, I didn't just stand at a fence in the rain. I stood at a fence, and I stood at a fence a lot. On the other side of the fence were the football players. And I was not one of them. I was not one of them for multiple reasons. I was too small to play line. And the only position that I would have been even close to able to play was already occupied by a guy named Jeff Vengers. And he was an incredible athlete, and it would not even have been a contest or a competition had I gone out for the team and tried to play that position. And I know how to play football. And that doesn't mean I didn't play football in the backyard. I didn't play, beside the church building on Sunday afternoons. I knew the rules. What I meant was I didn't know how one went about being on the football team. I thought you had to be invited. I didn't know you could just show up or sign up or try out. And it was silly. It was one of those boyhood beliefs. I thought the same thing about lots of things. I thought the same thing about shop class. I thought the same thing about the automotive class. I thought the same thing about trade school. I thought some families got to do those things and some families didn't. And our family was one of the ones that didn't. Our family wasn't the family that got to do those things. Now, nobody ever treated us bad. And in fact, in school, I was somewhat well known and even a well-liked student. I just didn't think those opportunities were open to me. I know it was silly, but I didn't know any better, and I never asked anyone, and no one ever asked me. So I stood at the fence on Friday nights and watched the Oxford Yellow Jackets play ball. I was at Oxford High School when Coach Bill Burgess was there. He was the head coach of the football team, and at some point, achieved legendary status, not just at our high school, but at Jacksonville State University. My very first memory of Coach Burgess was when I was in the 7th grade and he spoke at our graduation. And it made an impression on me. It may be the very first time that I ever thought to myself, man, I'd like to be a public speaker. There was this, I don't know, this aura or this vibe that he gave off. He was a man's man. He was extremely masculine. He had this really distinct way of speaking. And as a 7th grade student, I watched when he came in, and the interaction and the respect from the female teachers. There was something there that even a boy could understand. It may be what our society would call toxic masculinity, but in those days, it was just the idea that you had these young ladies that taught school, and then you had this man, this masculine male who came in and was as good with the students as they were, but he gave off this masculine air of confidence and competence. As I transitioned into high school, my high school career would be molded by observing from a distance of men like Coach Maniscalco, Coach Houston, and Coach Burgess. And I stood by that fence and I watched those boys play ball, but I watched those boys because I was intrigued at the relationship that the guys on that team had with those men. I stood at the fence one Friday night as it rained on those guys playing football. I was wearing my Army surplus poncho that I'd bought at the Army Mule and carried in a little rolled up gas mask bag in the back seat of my car. And I was standing there sheltered from the rain in my Army surplus poncho, standing at the fence. And I have this memory, I have this picture of Coach Burgess. He was silhouetted against the stadium lights, and water just dripped off the bill of that black cap with that golden O on the front of it. One of the running jokes at Oxford High School was that we have a catwalk from the main building to the school building where the elementary building was. The elementary building was across a big open road, and then a wide front lawn, and then a big flat, and maybe 3 steps up to this big, huge portico, this front porch. And if you had to leave the main building and go to the cafeteria when it was raining, or you had classes over there in the elementary building and it was raining, it was just miserable. And so we always had this idea that, we should have a catwalk. And then as the school cartoonist, I can remember designing catwalks, and I can remember drawing tunnels and the Habitrail tubes that you'd use for your hamsters. It was just kind of a running joke that you had to run from that building to get over there to the cafeteria. You'd stand there on the front steps of the main building and you'd watch it rain and you'd think, do I really want to eat lunch today? And then you make a mad dash, dodging raindrops, puddles, cars, and slower students. Everybody ran to the cafeteria except Coach Burgess. He always walked in the rain. It didn't bother him. He actually came from the gym, which was on the other side of the main building, and I don't think he passed through the building. I think he just walked around the building on the sidewalk, and if he even noticed the rain didn't affect him. I actually heard him say, "Men don't run in the rain." And I stopped running in the rain. I stopped putting the books over my head. And I would just step out and walk in the rain. I didn't want to be Coach Burgess. I didn't want to be like Coach Burgess. I wasn't an athlete. I wasn't a coach. I didn't understand those things. I wanted to be like my dad. But I respected Coach Burgess. And although I never played ball for him, there was something in me that wanted that if he ever saw me do anything, I wanted his approval, if not his respect. Chances are he finished his tenure at Oxford High School and he never even knew my name. Oh, he might have heard it when it was announced that I was going to do the invocation at the beginning of a football game, and I would pray over the PA system at our home games. He may have connected my name to some of the speeches I gave as senior class president when I spoke at pep rallies. He probably ignored the fact that instead of wearing a yellow jacket jersey on pep rally day, sometimes I was up on stage with Susan Cowan doing a Mork and Mindy skit with the cheerleaders. If he ever really knew who I was or he ever even noticed me, it was never acknowledged. And that's not to imply anything bad or negative about Coach Burgess. It's merely to say that this man commanded respect, even from somebody who was not connected to him, who didn't have a personal relationship with him, and who wasn't a part of his program. Coach Burgess was the type of man that he influenced people that he didn't even know. His sons, Rick and Greg, were in school with me. Now, they were younger than me, and we did not interact. Rick has a radio show now, and Rick just published a book about his dad, and it's got some really cool lessons in it. And the book is entitled "Men Don't Run in the Rain." I left Oxford, Alabama in 1981. And in 1992, I was allowed to be part of a different team in Huntsville, Alabama, and it was not a football team. It was a SWAT team. In my efforts to try to connect with those guys and in my efforts to effectively minister to those men, I would meet them on their training days and go through their PT regimen with them. Well, I'd go as best I could, not at their level, and couldn't always keep up with them. But in those days, the SR team, that's what we were called back then, the Special Response Team. In those days, they trained on Tuesdays from 6 p.m. to 2 a.m. So I would go to work for a full day, and then I would leave and go home and eat supper with Jackie, and then I would go and meet these guys at the range. And everybody knew we ran. We ran every single training day. It was just one, and some people even didn't try out for the team because I don't want to do all that running. Well, I kind of inherited the fact that I was going to have running as part of my culture. And either at the beginning of the shift or at the end of the shift at 2 a.m., the team was going to go for a run. And we ran. And we ran every training day, and we ran no matter what. We ran in the dark, we ran in the snow, we ran in the heat, we ran in the cold, and we ran in the rain. I've run in rain so hard I couldn't see. Now, people who didn't run, people who weren't runners, people who didn't do running for their exercise thought we were crazy. And I remember they would tease us. I remember being with Donnie Daly one time and somebody trying to be a wise guy and say something about the fact that, hey, you guys are going to be running this really terrible bad weather and you guys aren't very smart. And I'd hate to be in your shoes and have to run in that weather today. And Donnie always replied, every time anybody said anything about the weather we were going to run in, Donnie would look at him and say, it don't rain on a black uniform. I think what he meant was that wearing a black uniform dictated his behavior, not the weather. And I really think, looking back on it, that's what Coach Burgess was saying. He said the same thing in a different way. Your circumstances, the weather, the rain, does not affect whether we walk our walk or not. Our character and commitment control our conduct and not our circumstances. Our circumstances do not control or influence how we choose to behave, what we choose to do. Our circumstances should not affect or change our character, commitment, control, or conduct. James, the brother of Jesus, not a football coach, uses the phrase that if someone doubts, if his faith is doubtful, he is like a wave of the sea driven and tossed by the wind. You think about a wave on the sea moves and does what it does because of the external circumstances. Waves are driven by the wind. Now, ships are propelled by the wind, but they're not controlled by the wind. There's a famous line from a poem, The Winds of Fate by Ella Wheeler, and it says, it's not the gale, but the set of the sail that determines where the ship goes. Our decisions about integrity, our decisions about responsibility, our decisions about honesty and purity and patriotism, our decisions about all the things that are important are not made because of external circumstances. Our circumstances should have no effect on our decision-making process. Consequences should not affect our integrity. We do what is right. We walk our walk regardless of the outcomes. Bad weather, bad circumstances should have no effect on the discipline of a football player, a football coach, a SWAT team, or a man. Some men are running the rain, but some men run not because it's raining, but even though it's raining. And I really think what Coach Burgess meant was, it's not that men don't run in the rain. It's men don't run when it's raining, just to get out of the rain. Using the tool of shortwave radio, World Christian Broadcasting literally covers the world every day with the gospel. They use 2 large curtain antennas. One is located in Anchor Point, Alaska, and the other in Madagascar. They send out messages that are recorded at their international home in Franklin, Tennessee. They make available 40 hours of broadcast every day. The broadcasts are made in English, Chinese, Russian, Spanish, Portuguese, Korean, English for Africa, and Arabic. They would love for your group to visit them. You can bring your ladies group, your youth group, or your men's group. Just give them a call at 615-371-8707, 615-371-8707, or you can go to worldchristian.org, find the Donate Here button, and make a financial contribution to support this work that literally covers the world every day with the gospel. World Christian Broadcasting, in cooperation with Keeping Up with Jones, the Lonnie Jones podcast adventure.